backdrop. Okay, so I'm going to draw in the scene first of all, getting a rough kind of guide of where I'm going to be. That's fine. You can keep that, just very loosely working through that, and then with again the large brush, I can kind of start to work through just keeping this idea as we did from those charcoal drawings, this idea of keeping your scale. It's good to, even with a large one, it's not just a filling, you can kind of draw with it as well. So you're still mapping out. So this idea of energy, begins quite early on, working with oils. As I said before, really, we're going to just normally have a wash down, something that's kind of dry and ready to kind of get paint onto, a base layer, but just building this in the early stages means I can start to, very early on, start to formulate this feel, and even compositionally I know that this is starting to kind of reference some of those strong kind of perspective lines through here. I've got very dark grey, which I can then start to work through and bring in just very subtle colour changes, just to bring out things in this particular composition that I feel I want to draw attention to. And again, we know that we're going to paint over all of this, but the dark to light means that we can work quite freely with this idea of the dark tones. Working through here.
So in your mind, are you doing representation? You're not?
Are
you taking the shapes from... what do you...
I kind of am working representationally, so I'm going too far. I'm starting to represent shadows and tones. So this line takes me down here. I've got this one coming down here. I'm going to now work a section on the far left where I can then start to also get some of the outer tone that's coming through there. Obviously the paint is absorbing very quickly into the paper because it's raw. But very early on I can start to get some of these tonal references that I feel that are kind of important to the overall piece. And again, working like this in such a loose way allows me to not overthink, get lots of energy into it, and start off with kind of...
Have you got an idea of how you want it to be?
The end product. The end product.
This is to be abstract, yes?
No, this is...
Oh, it's not.
No, this is to kind of go high end, like turbocharged expressionism.
Right.
Yeah? So there is no such thing really, but it's that kind of energy we're trying to...
So getting energy
inject,
into your paint,
really to kind of begin that
your
kind
mark making.
Exactly, to kind of really get that kind of flowing through very early on. It means that we can then kind of start to add in and build in, as we're kind of working through. So I would need more of this, and again I can then start adding a little bit more in. Going in darker sometimes than I need to, because it's better to go kind of in with your contrasts, but also you can start to pick out some of these kind of shapes, and working in quite a loose, liberal way means that you're kind of taking the stabilizers off very early on.
Isn't there a rule about, well, not a rule, but a recommendation that you work dark to light or light to dark? I can't remember.
Yes, I mean, dark to light is the kind of traditional favoured, and the main reason for that is that you can...
Is this for oils?
This is for acrylics and oils. So you'll find that they're kind of trying, I believe, and the way I tend to approach oils and acrylics is they have very similar kind of traditional processes behind them that you can apply. It's just the medium that gives you a bit of a different effect. It's the outcome of the paint that kind of changes. So this really is about, and also the reason that painting kind of light over dark means that the light usually has to put heavier marks down to kind of cover it, and therefore it projects forwards as well. So you're kind of maximising what you're doing and why you're doing it. So let's have a little look if I can just.
That's an amazing paint.
Let's have a look. So I'm blocking in the sky very, very quickly.
I don't understand how Stuart can work with oil and not get it all over him.
Oh, well, give me time. So I need a different blue in this, but it's just for this exercise process. I'm going to take plenty in there and again go really kind of way in, too far. I'm going to make sure it overlaps at all kind of stages. And again, take through, you can kind of start here and you can block and fill in like this. Nothing wrong with that at all. For me, I'm going to make sure that the majority of the sky is kind of covered. I'm not going to worry too much about the light sections coming through.
Colours have used there, it's a lovely colour.
Going to look at some of the kind of shapes that are kind of emerging,
Blue and white.
And raw umber.
Can't see anything. Oh, it's on the palette, yes, you're right.
Yeah, so it's just really kind of blocking out some of those kind of areas where you think, okay, leaving kind of the shapes fine. It's very raw, very rough, and you can go back in, you can continue with the same brush, building and building and building, and starting to start to control this. I'm not taking through the whole painting, this is just literally the very beginning kind of stages, but the other way you can start to develop and build mark making, and lots of heavy gestures is using a slightly smaller brush, or a very much smaller brush than you might need. In an early stage painting, you wouldn't want something as small as that to begin a painting like this. You would want to have something a bit larger so you could really kind of cover the main area to block out some of your shape, because we're working in a kind of overly and overtly expressive way. We're trying to kind of knock that back early on, trying to give it a bit more energy, one way or the other. So if I were to work a little bit more loosely, liberally, but using a much smaller brush, one that's too small really for what I need, I would then start to work in much more drawn, much more similar to the charcoal that we looked at. So I'm still looking at form, I'm still looking at chunks of these kind of grasses and light and darks, building in. I'm looking at scale as well, so the way I might gesture, the way I might kind of work within that is going to be looser, and start to build in, taking colours as I kind of see and want them as well. So I'm not going to worry about mixing every single colour that I actually have or want on there. I'm going to start to just block it in now, changing it up.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
You've got the sort of reddish back here and reddish there, which is the colour you've got, and up here. But the background is more of a sort of darker grey colour, and I'm kind of thinking, and then you've got this sort of yellowy stuff on top. That's if you're going to be accurate to the picture. So I'm just wondering why you're using so much of the red in the background rather than one of the other background colours.
Because this is just the starting point. It's not going to end up with these colours. So this is like the first 20% of how you might paint a painting. So the colour references are, they has to be, for me, just in the ballpark. I'm looking at lights and darks and kind of maybe base colours that can be painted into and over, so that I can then start to do what I'm doing now, which is kind of beginning to kind of layer, but really kind of keep that sketching quality as well. I need to kind of know that I can block areas in. I've got dark tones behind here. Again, I'm trying to work intuitively and not kind of with too much consideration. So I'm trying to get a feeling the essence of the place and the space and that kind of energy that runs through it. And again, if you remember the Mad Charcoal video with the charcoal, where he used that kind of to get a sense of what was going on with his form, the colour is something that you could mix out all your colours, let them all ready and blended, but in a way I don't kind of work like that. So for me, I'm just going to make sure that I've got the energy starting to kind of build and run through.
Gives a warmer base though, doesn't it?
It gives a different kind of base tone, and also when you don't have the accurate colours, it gives you a reason, purpose to have to go back and work more on it. So in some ways, I think subconsciously I'm kind of purposely not getting the right colour to begin with, because it's something I want to go back to.
The colour's made up of layers of colours. It's not a colour, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, definitely, you can work through that layering process.
Especially with the landscape. I mean, it comes across as maybe yellow.
Yeah, I mean, I've got loads of greens.
There's loads of colours in there.
Yeah, I've got loads of greens to get in there. I've got kind of a lot of stuff going on. Really, at this stage, it's about the energy. It's about getting this kind of sense of, all that energy kind of flowing through from this particular environment and starting to build it up. And you can see that this is a much more drawing with paint approach to kind of getting your expression across, getting the idea of expressionism. If I know then I've got these kind of mounds kind of back here, I'm not going to work in the same way that I would do for these kind of closer sections down here. This is going to be much more kind of just blocky bits that kind of will connect at some point later on. Yeah, because as I go through, for example, I begin to introduce the green now, I can then start to do that down here. And again, I don't have all the colours that I would want to kind of have to do a full painting right here and now, but what I do have is enough to kind of get me started and enough to kind of show you, how I might begin to introduce and build this idea of expressionism, but it's kind of like I said, turbocharged really. We're really kind of just starting to be able to work intuitively. So it's really teaching us, what I'm showing you is how we can work super, super quickly. We've looked at things like 1 hour paintings before. We've in all those kind of elements, painting with non-formal painting tools, things like that, and that's really good stuff. This is you using your formal painting tools and working in a way where you're literally kind of, painting as if your kind of house is about to burn down, but you want to just finish the last bit of work on your latest piece. So really kind of starting to look for these shapes and forms, again, intuitive mark making. Letting it kind of really feed around, dance around. You end up having a great place to begin your painting in a way. So this is about developing your underpainting in a way, but it's not quite under, it's kind of going to be mingled into everything else that you're doing. So when I work on these sections down here, these little mounds are really just marks and shapes and
Do you ever look at an underpainting and think, do you know, this is great, I don't want to do any more?
I mean, we sometimes we do a really great job and we kind of go, oh God, that's great, I don't really, like exactly that. Most of the time, it's not, it needs work, because it's great to kind of feel that satisfaction from those kind of areas, but we really mustn't fall into that kind of, depending on what we're really kind of thinking we want. I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's a kind of, I'd love to just leave it there, kind of feeling, and really.
Is that not down to knowing when to stop?
Well, no, because the underpainting, unless we're setting out to do an underpainting, to do a very thin washed painting or something that's just very suggestive, and that's our particular theme or style or thing that we're looking at. which is different to where we imagine the painting might end up and how it might end up looking. But generally, we get kind of subdued by the beauty of how well it might be done, and also the fact that we feel we've done really well. So we don't want to paint over something where we've done a really good job of it. You know.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Say, you've got your charcoal, which is really good. Then you've got underpainting.
Yeah.
At a level that you think, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Then,
well, the best thing to do is to photograph the stages.
Yes,
because ultimately, if we've got them electronically, most of the time, that's kind of all we need to a certain point. Or you can do like a several kind of paintings. If you were particularly happy, you could then think, I'm going to save that. That's an example of an underpainting for myself, and then I'm going to do the same painting but take it through the full stages. Yeah. But it's
the reason that I asked that other question is I think this mark making here is absolutely wonderful, and I kind of wouldn't want to do anything with it.
Well, that's the thing. I've got I'm definitely someone who needs to kind of push further through. I do get sometimes subdued, like we were just talking about with Heather and what that means, and sometimes how it kind of makes me think, oh, yeah, I kind of, and even now, I think probably, depending on me and also depending on what the painting's for, I kind of want to sometimes leave things a bit maybe prematurely, and other times I need to really look at what it's for. If it's for a particular painting price that maybe kind of, they have a certain kind of style that they tend to choose or something, then I should probably look at that and think, okay, well, what are they looking for? What's this particular set of judges looking for in a painting? And then I have to really kind of start to listen to that a little bit and kind of figure out, well, have I gone far enough? Is it doing what I'm doing? And if so, is it my style? Is it the kind of painting I want to paint? Or do I want to just be a bit more, this is what I'm going to do, and they don't like it, they don't like it, and I'm going to just continue with my own version of things. But working like this is a great exercise in kind of just developing your intuition, letting your eyes catch something and go, oh yeah, that's down here. I'm going to work that through here. Keep building, and it's really about trying to build in that kind of energy. You don't have to keep it up for the whole time, but if you start off like this, you've got much more chance of kind of capturing that energy later on, where you can actually really kind of harness it and say, okay, well, in reality, I won't keep all of that, but I can be inspired by kind of elements of it, and then you kind of start to understand.
You're talking about energy, but so many paintings, does this make them bad paintings? Just don't have any energy at all?
No. This is just an exercise in this particular type of painting. This doesn't mean that all paintings have to be like that by any means. That's kind of, because that's also saying that it's got to be one type of art that's out there for everyone, and obviously we don't want that. We want uniqueness, we want individuality, we want energy, but we also want things that are countering that as well. We want things that are kind of quite still and beautiful and kind of maybe even flat and static, They've all got a quality to them, they've got a kind of purpose and reason for kind of being, and everyone's, there's taste out of it.
I look through, just as an interest, I look through art auctions.
Yeah.
And from the lowest of the low to, the highest high. And you sort of get quite blasé. You look at some of them and you just think, but would I hang that on my wall? It could be, your 50 quid picture, or it could be your 500, 1,000 sort of thing.
Yeah. You can get saturated, can't you?
Yeah.
So look, I'm going to kind of, in a minute, I'm going to wind things up.
Are you going to continue with this actual exercise through so we could see how it would develop?
Yeah, I think I probably will.
That would be good.
I think I probably will, because I think it's quite good anyway. And also, it's always nice to have something that's kind of, you can see that development, a bit like with the piece for New York,
Yes,
it's quite nice to kind of,
very useful.
so things like that I think are good anyway, and it's also nice to kind of be able to kind of you know, just explore this, because I don't work traditionally from just one photograph. You know, I'll often kind of take things, you know, and I'll manipulate them a little bit, you know. But yeah, it's nice to kind of have that focus. But I think I'll kind of, for that, I'll leave that there today.
Yeah.
And just,
Can we take a photo of that?
yeah, please do, yeah, that's great.